The moon hung heavy in the sky, its silver glow spilling across the village as drums thundered in rhythm. Kunto stood among the crowd, heart swelling with pride as voices lifted like smoke into the heavens. Elder Jabari stepped forward, robes flowing and staff glowing faintly with ancient carvings. His voice rose, steady yet filled with power, as he declared, "Tonight, we honor the oath of the warriors." The people cheered, but the air shifted. A fierce wind swept through, scattering sparks from the bonfire. Jabari staggered, his face paling as he whispered, "The curse. It awakens." Kunto rushed forward, fear pounding in his chest as the elder's knees buckled. Jabari's final breath trembled with warning, "Protect the oath, or all shall fall." Silence gripped the night, broken only by cries of despair. Kunto caught the elder's body, life slipping too fast. The sacred staff clattered to the earth, glowing brighter than ever, while whispers of spirits filled the air like mournful echoes. The village froze in silence as the flames sputtered low. Kunto cradled Jabari's body, the elder's final words heavy on his chest. A woman cried out, "The curse has returned." Fear rippled through the people, some whispering prayers, others clutching children close. The staff on the ground pulsed with life, its carvings shifting like breathing embers. Io stepped forward, firm hand on Kunto's shoulder, his voice steady as he said, "You are not alone." Though his tone carried courage, his eyes betrayed fear. Murmurs spread, suspicion and dread feeding unrest. Some called it destiny, others betrayal. Kunto stared at the staff, its glow burning into his mind. The night felt colder, the stars watching with silent judgment. Spirits seemed to gather around him, unseen but present, their whispers thick in the air. His heart thundered with questions that had no answers. Something greater had awakened, and it would not be ignored. Jabari's body was carried into the shrine, stone walls etched with ancestral carvings glowing faintly in lamplight. Kunto followed, each step heavy, ears ringing with the elder's last words. Elder Amara stood near the altar, her gaze steady yet sorrowful. Her voice filled the chamber as she said, "The oath cannot be broken. If the staff shines, destiny has chosen." The words echoed like thunder. Kunto's voice cracked as he asked, "Why me?" Amara's stare cut deep, answering, "Because blood remembers what the heart forgets." On the altar, the staff pulsed brighter, golden light stretching across walls like veins. A low rumble of thunder rolled, though the sky outside was clear. The air thickened, spirits brushing against skin. Kunto's breath grew shallow, feeling unseen hands guiding and judging him all at once. The shrine became a cage of destiny, pressing closer with every heartbeat. Outside the shrine, torches lit the night as villagers gathered in fear and uncertainty. Oba stepped forward, his crimson robes flowing, voice sharp as he declared, "The curse is not fate but weakness. Old ways have failed us." His words struck like fire, stirring nods from some who feared doom. The crowd buzzed with unease, torn between faith and survival. Kunto stepped into the torchlight, eyes hard with grief and resolve. His voice rang clear, "Our ancestors are not weakness. Their oath is our strength." Silence fell heavy, broken only by the crackling of torches. Oba's gaze locked on Kunto, cold and piercing. The people shifted uneasily, their hearts caught between two paths. A storm brewed that no flame could dispel, not in the skies but within the village itself. The fire burned low, shadows stretching long across the earth. Kunto's hands trembled as he lifted his chin, voice unwavering. "I will protect the oath. I will carry what Elder Jabari could not." The crowd stirred, hope clashing with fear. Io stepped beside him, spear in hand, declaring, "Then I stand with you." His presence steadied the air, if only for a moment. Elder Amara whispered softly, "The ancestors have chosen." The staff glowed brighter, bathing Kunto in golden light, as though blessing him with unseen hands. Villagers bowed their heads, some in prayer, others in surrender. Kunto raised his eyes to the stars, hearing whispers of spirits guiding his soul. The night had changed, and with it, so had his destiny. The journey began not in triumph but in sacrifice. The dawn came pale and watchful, mist curling over the shrine stones as the village held its breath. Kunto knelt beside the glowing staff, palms trembling with heat that was not fire. Elder Amara traced the carvings and said, "Names live here. They answer when we do not run." The chamber seemed to thrum, a heartbeat older than mountains. Io stood at the door, shoulders squared, eyes scanning the quiet like a god against storms. Kunto whispered, "I hear them, but their words cut like flint." Amara closed his fingers over the wood and said, "Then bleed truth and stand." A faint gust stirred the lamps, and the soot bent toward the staff as if in prayer. Kunto felt a path open, rough and holy, leading through fear into duty. He lifted the staff and said, "If they call, I will walk." The reply came as a hush that felt like love and law. Io nodded and said, "We move together." Outside, the light sharpened, and the day stepped into its work. By the river, reeds bent with the water's slow hymn, and the sky carried the scent of rain not yet born. Kunto paced the bank, eyes on his wavering reflection. He said, "If I fail, the oath breaks twice." A heron rose, wing beats writing a patient script across the air. Io set his spear aside and said, "You breathe like a man drowning in clean water." Kunto laughed once, thin and bitter. "These hands shake when the drums stop," he said. Io drew a line in the mud and said, "Stand here, let the fear speak, then answer it." The river lapped over Kunto's toes, cold and bracing. He closed his eyes and heard a whisper that carried sand and thunder. Elder Amara's voice arrived soft behind them. She said, "Doubt is a door. Open it but do not move in." Kunto inhaled, held the air, and felt the staff's echo steady his bones. He said, "I will not run." Night pressed close as the ritual circle bloomed with ash and chalk, drums breathing like great animals in sleep. Kunto stepped within the marks, heat gathering under his skin. Elder Amara scattered kola and said, "Ancestors, lend fire that heals and does not consume." Smoke from the brazier rose in braids, weaving faces from memory and dust. Io stood beyond the circle, silent, a wall made of loyalty. Kunto said, "If you know me, teach me to know myself." The drums deepened, and the staff pulsed with a rhythm that matched his chest. Shadows crowded the edges, not cruel, only vast. A voice old as ironwood moved through the smoke and said, "Carry the oath like water, not like stone." Tears found Kunto without shame. Amara nodded once, eyes bright. She said, "You are seen." The circle cooled, and the night let out a slow breath. The training ground baked under Nu's hard stare, dust lifting with each step like memory refusing to settle. Io handed Kunto a wooden blade and said, "Hold the line your heart draws." Kunto raised his guard, shoulders tight with thought. Io moved swift, tapping his knuckles and saying, "Less mind, more marrow." They traded blows that sounded like doors shutting on doubt. Sweat ran hot, stinging truth into skin. Kunto said, "What if mercy unarms me?" Io circled and answered, "Mercy is aim, not weakness." A feint, a pivot, and Kunto found balance where fear had stood. Elder Amara watched from shade, unread and steady. Dust haloed the fighters as if the ground approved. A final clash rang clean. Io lowered his blade and said, "You can carry the oath without dropping yourself." Kunto breathed and believed enough to try again. Dusk bled across the hills as cicadas stitched the air with silver thread. Kunto stood at the threshold of the shrine, the staff warm as a living hand. Elder Amara lit a thin candle and said, "Ask and listen without wanting." The flame bowed to a wind that did not touch skin. Smoke turned, drew a face that hovered between mercy and hunger. Kunto said, "Show me the thorn in our field." The vision widened, revealing a figure at the edge of the crowd, familiar posture cloaked in dusk. Bracelets chimed, and the sound rang like a warning bell. Io stepped closer, voice low. He said, "Do you know that shadow?" Kunto's breath caught, memory tugging at kin and promise. The smoke thinned, leaving the echo of metal and a path bending toward betrayal. Amara said, "Guard your love, or it will be used to open doors against you." Night closed, certain and wide. The sun struck hard upon the stone field where trials were held, dust rising with each breath. Kunto stood in the center, staff gripped tight, eyes narrowed against the blaze. Elder Amara's voice carried over the circle, saying, "Strength is not in arms, but in the will that guides them." Warriors gathered to watch, their faces stern with expectation. Io called out, "Stand tall, the earth waits for your step." Kunto inhaled, body quivering, as wooden weapons struck against his god. Each blow tested his bones, each strike demanded more resolve. Sweat stung his eyes, yet his grip did not falter. He said through clenched teeth, "I will not yield." Dust swirled like spirits, shaping paths around his feet. The circle's silence deepened as the final strike fell. Kunto's arms held, trembling but firm, the staff glowing faintly with approval. Elder Amara nodded once, eyes softening. She said, "The oath lives in you, let it breathe." The crowd's murmur shifted from doubt into respect. Shadows thickened beneath the trees, as Oba met secretly with the betrayer, bracelets jingling with restless ambition. Oba's voice was sharp, saying, "Kunto's rise threatens us both, bend him or break him." The betrayer's jaw tightened, torn between duty and hunger. "He trusts me," came the answer, voice low, almost trembling. Oba leaned close, crimson robe catching the torchlight, and said, "Trust is a blade sharper than steel, use it." Crickets hummed a steady warning as silence settled after his words. The betrayer's eyes wavered with regret but steadied into resolve. "If the oath is his, then I will take it by fire or blood," the betrayer said. Oba's smile was thin, more shadow than joy. The pact sealed itself in the heavy night air, carried away by rustling leaves that seemed to whisper of betrayal. The trees leaned close, as if listening to a wound being borne. The shrine glowed with dim firelight, shadows of ancestors carved in stone watching. Kunto stood before Elder Amara, chest heaving, staff resting heavy in his grip. He said, "The trials burn my flesh, but my heart still shakes." Amara's gaze pierced him as she said, "Strength without root falls with the wind. Listen deeper." Her hand traced symbols on the wall, each line alive with memory. The carvings pulsed faintly, stories older than memory rising in the light. Kunto closed his eyes and heard voices layered as one, whispering truths and warnings. "Your blood is a river. It flows where stone once stood," the voices said. He staggered, trembling with the weight of unseen judgment. Amara steadied him, firm but gentle, saying, "You are not alone in this oath. The ancestors carry it with you." The chamber thrummed, air heavy with unseen wings. Kunto's breath steadied, resolve hardening like tempered steel. Night winds howled across the hills, carrying voices of spirits that clawed at the edges of the circle. Kunto stood firm, staff glowing faintly as dark shapes crawled from the ground. Their eyes burned red, mouths wide with silence. Io rushed to his side, spear flashing under moonlight. "They test more than your hands," Io shouted. Kunto raised the staff, its glow pushing shadows back. Fear burned inside him, yet something deeper pushed outward, stronger than his trembling. The first spirit lunged, claws tearing air. But the staff's light struck, bursting like flame against its form. The others circled, whispering curses that made the earth shake. Kunto cried out, "I carry the oath." The words shattered the whispers, scattering them into dust. Breathless, he lowered the staff, sweat dripping like rain. Io clasped his arm and said, "They will come again, but so will you." The moon shone brighter, witness to their defiance. The dust settled as dawn cracked, painting the horizon in crimson and gold. Kunto staggered, shoulders heavy but eyes alive. The villagers gathered at the edge of the hill, whispers of awe carrying through the morning air. Elder Amara approached, her steps slow but steady, saying, "You have faced what is unseen, and lived." Kunto lowered the staff, voice hoarse as he said, "They did not break me." Io stood tall beside him, spear grounded, gaze proud. The villagers bowed their heads, respect blooming where doubt once grew. Children peered wide-eyed, clutching mother's robes. The staff pulsed softly, steady like a heartbeat. Amara's hand rested on Kunto's shoulder. She whispered, "Respect is earned not in peace but in fire. The fire has touched you." The sun lifted higher, burning shadows away. Kunto breathed deep, and in that breath lay the beginning of strength that would not bow. The council fire crackled, smoke coiling toward the stars as the elders gathered in tense silence. Oba stood tall, crimson robes shimmering in firelight, voice sharp as a blade. He said, "Tradition weakens us. The curse proves the past cannot hold the future." Murmurs rippled through the crowd, some nodding in fear, others glaring in defiance. Elder Amara stepped forward, her tone steady as she said, "The oath binds us, not as chains but as roots." Oba's eyes burned cold, his words striking harder. "Roots rot when watered with fear. I offer a new way." The villagers shifted uneasily, torn between old faith and false promise. Kunto clenched the staff, breath shallow, fury rising. Io whispered at his side. They listened to him. "We must stand before the ground breaks." The fire snapped loudly, sparks flying as if echoing the division. The night felt like the edge of a blade, ready to cut. At dawn, the warriors gathered in the open field, dust rising as spears struck the earth in unison. Kunto stood before them, staff in hand, voice steady despite the storm within. "Our strength is not Oba's lies but the oath we swore," he said. The men and women shifted, their faces marked with doubt. Io raised his spear high, voice ringing, "If he walks, I walk." A spark lit in the crowd, whispers of courage rising. Some nodded, fists tight around weapons. Yet others lowered their eyes, fearful of Oba's wrath. Kunto stepped forward, staff pulsing softly with golden light. He said, "If we forget the oath, we bury our ancestors a second time." The field grew still, silence stretching thin before the first warrior shouted, "I stand with the oath." The cry spread, a tide swelling with hope. Kunto's chest lifted, fire burning steadier in his veins. In the shadow of the shrine, the betrayer met Oba once more, voice shaking but sharp. "He trusts me. I can wound him where no blade can reach," the betrayer said. Oba's smile was thin as he whispered, "Then strike, and the oath is ours to bend." Thunder rumbled, though the sky was clear, air thick with omen. The betrayer's eyes flickered with sorrow before hardening into resolve. "He will not see me coming," he said, though his hand trembled as it closed over his bracelets. Oba leaned close, crimson robe whispering against the earth, and replied, "Do not fail me. The people hunger for a leader who fears nothing." Silence pressed heavy between them. The betrayer looked toward the village lights in the distance, conflict flashing in his gaze. Yet when he turned back, only ambition remained. The pack tightened around his chest like a snare. The sacred hut door stood open, and the villagers gasped as the heirloom drum lay broken, its skin torn, its frame splintered. Elder Amara's voice cracked as she said, "This is no accident. The oath itself bleeds." Kunto dropped to his knees, hands hovering over the fragments, rage and grief warring in his chest. Io growled, "Someone has betrayed us from within." The villagers muttered, fear gnawing at their hearts. A child cried, echoing through the silence. Kunto lifted his head, fire burning in his eyes. "The oath will not break because wood is shattered. It lives in us." His voice rang against the broken silence. The people's fear softened, but doubt clung heavy as smoke. Elder Amara touched the fragments gently, her eyes wet. "This wound was meant to divide us," she whispered. The hut darkened as clouds rolled above, thunder answering sorrow. The night roared with sudden violence as Oba's men struck in ambush, blades glinting beneath torchlight. Kunto spun, staff blazing gold as he blocked the first strike. Sparks flew as steel met wood, alive with power. Ao leapt forward, spear thrusting with precision, his shout shaking the air. Villagers screamed, scattering into shadows. The attackers pressed hard, their movements ruthless and swift. Kunto's arms shook but held firm, each swing of the staff scattering enemies like leaves in storm winds. Blood sprayed across the dirt as the clash deepened. Io fought beside him, every strike driven by loyalty unbroken. Elder Amara called out, "Do not falter, for the oath breathes through you." Kunto cried, "Then it shall not die." His staff's glow burst wide, blinding the attackers, forcing them back into darkness. Breathless, Kunto lowered the weapon, chest heaving as silence reclaimed the night. The council square filled with heavy silence as the betrayer stepped into the torchlight, bracelets clinking like chains of guilt. Gasps rose from the villagers when Oba's voice thundered, "The oath's guardian is not who you believe." Kunto froze, heart clenched as eyes turned upon him. The betrayer's lips trembled before spitting venom. "He is weak, he will lead us all to ruin." Shadows deepened as whispers spread, sharp as knives. Elder Amara's face hardened, voice firm as she said, "Truth is not in the tongue of envy." Kunto's chest burned, rage and sorrow wrestling within. Io growled, hand on spear, but Kunto raised a hand to stop him. His voice cut through the murmurs, low yet steady. "If I am weak, then let my deeds show it." But betrayal stains deeper than failure. The villagers stirred, torn between doubt and faith. The night sky cracked with thunder, sealing the weight of revelation. Kunto's voice rang across the square, breaking like a drum beat. "Why betray the blood that binds us?" His words trembled with pain. The betrayer's eyes shone wet, but pride sharpened his voice. "I have lived in your shadow. The oath chose wrong." Gasps broke from the crowd, children clutched tighter to mothers. Oba's smile widened, feeding the fire. Elder Amara stepped closer, her voice sorrowful yet unyielding. "You betray not only him but every ancestor who walks with us." The betrayer's jaw clenched, bracelets rattling as his fists trembled. Io spat into the dirt, saying, "Your greed poisons us." Kunto's chest heaved, but his gaze softened with sorrow. "Brother, you choose envy when you could choose strength beside me," he said. For a heartbeat, silence stretched thick with grief. The betrayer's face flickered between regret and rage before hardening again. The torchlight hissed, sparks leaping into a restless night. Within the shrine, the staff glowed fiercely as Elder Amara guided Kunto closer. Her voice carried like thunder within stone. "This light burns only for those bound by blood." The carvings along the walls flared, echoing with ancestral voices. Kunto trembled, tears brimming as he whispered, "I never asked for this burden." Amara pressed her palm to his chest and said, "Burden becomes blessing when carried with truth." The staff's glow surged brighter, casting long shadows that stretched like wings. Outside, the betrayer's voice shouted, lies to sway the people, but the shrine walls rang louder with truth. Kunto lifted the staff, light flaring golden across his face. He whispered, "If this is my path, then let it blaze." Amara's eyes softened, proud yet sorrowful. "The prophecy is not chains, child. It is a door. You must choose to walk through it." The chamber vibrated as if the ancestors themselves breathed. Oba's voice thundered through the square, twisting the betrayer's confession into poison. "See how jealousy festers when tradition blinds us? The oath divides, and only I can unite." Villagers shifted uneasily, fear gnawing at their faith. Kunto emerged from the shrine, golden staff blazing against Oba's crimson robe. His voice cut sharp. "You speak of unity, but so only chains." Oba sneered, his gaze piercing like a blade. "And what do you offer? A curse disguised as hope?" Gasps filled the square, but Kunto's face did not waver. "I offer truth carried in the blood of our ancestors," he answered. Elder Amara stood behind him, silent but unmovable. Io raised his spear, his voice steady. Then let those who still honor the oath stand now. Slowly, warriors stepped forward, forming a line at Kunto's side. The fire crackled louder, as though echoing the people's choice. The shrine bells tolled low as the staff's glow spread across the crowd, illuminating faces torn by fear and hope. Kunto lifted it high, voice raw yet unshaken. I accept what was given. I carry the oath not as curse but as promise. The villagers hushed, caught by his fire. Io's chest swelled, his spear planted firm beside him. Elder Amara whispered a prayer, her voice carried by the wind. Oba's jaw tightened, his eyes dark with fury. The betrayer turned his gaze away, regret flashing but too late to stop his path. Children looked up, eyes shining with awe. Kunto's breath steadied as the staff pulsed in rhythm with his heart. He said, "If I must bleed for this land, then let my blood bind us stronger." The sky rumbled, stars gleaming brighter as if answering. The people bowed their heads, a tide shifting at last toward destiny. The wind carried a strange hush, as stars burned brighter than fire. In the shrine courtyard, Kunto knelt with the staff pressed to the earth, his breath ragged. The ground trembled softly, and a voice older than stone moved through the air. "Child of the oath, the final storm approaches." Kunto's hands shook, sweat dripping onto dust as he whispered, "What must I sacrifice to keep them safe?" The spirit's voice rippled through the night, neither kind nor cruel. "Your blood, your love, or your very self." Elder Amara watched with solemn eyes, whispering prayers beneath her breath. Io stepped forward, spear in hand, his face pale but steady. "You will not face this alone," he said firmly. Kunto lifted his head, eyes wet with fire and fear. He whispered, "Then let the storm come. I will not bow." The staff pulsed golden, casting shadows that bent like wings over the shrine walls. The dawn broke blood-red across the hills as drums thundered from distant villages. Warriors gathered in ranks, shields lifted, spears gleaming in new light. Kunto stood before them, the staff glowing like fire in his hands. His voice rang, "Our land calls, and we answer as one." The warriors stomped their feet in rhythm, earth trembling under their unity. Io raised his spear high, shouting for the oath. The cry was taken up by hundreds, a tide of voices rolling like thunder. Elder Amara lifted her hands, chanting blessings as incense curled into the sky. Yet beyond the hills smoke rose, black and thick, heralding Oba's army. Fear rippled through the lines, but Kunto's gaze did not waver. He said, "If we fall, let it be standing. If we live, let it be free." The warriors slammed spears into the ground again, fire blazing in their eyes. The first clash shook the earth. Oba's men surged forward in dark armor, blades glinting. Kunto rushed ahead, staff blazing golden arcs that struck the ground, scattering foes with bursts of light. Io fought at his side, spear cutting through the storm of steel. Screams tore through the air as warriors clashed, dust choking breath. Elder Amara's chants rose louder, weaving strength into weary bodies. Kunto's arms ached, but his will roared stronger than pain. He cried out, "The oath lives in us!" The staff flared, scattering 3 men in a flash of gold. Oba's forces pressed harder, shields slamming, feet stomping. The betrayer appeared among them, his blade aimed at Kunto's back, eyes cold. Io saw him and shouted, "Behind you!" The air filled with sparks as steel met glowing wood, destiny grinding closer with every strike. Amid the chaos, Oba strode forward, crimson robes whipping like fire in storm winds. His voice boomed above the clash, "You are nothing but a child holding a stick." Kunto turned, staff glowing brighter as if answering. Their eyes locked, fury and destiny colliding. Oba drew a curved blade, its edge black with shadows. He slashed forward, sparks flying as staff met steel. The ground shuddered beneath their clash, warriors pausing as the duel seized the battlefield. Io fought to keep enemies from swarming, his voice hoarse, shouting, "Hold the line!" Elder Amara's chants rose higher, thunder echoing her words. Oba's laughter cut through the storm. "Your ancestors cannot save you now," he snarled. Kunto cried, "They walk with me." The staff burst into golden fire, forcing Oba back with a roar of rage. Dust whirled around them as the duel consumed the field. The clash reached its breaking point as Oba pressed harder, blade cutting through sparks, forcing Kunto back step by step. Villagers cried out from the edges, hope trembling on their lips. The betrayer lunged suddenly, blade raised to strike Kunto's side. Time slowed, Kunto's eyes wide with shock. Io roared and threw himself forward, spear deflecting the blow, body taking the cut meant for his brother in arms. Blood sprayed across the dirt, and Io fell, gasping. Kunto screamed his name, grief breaking into fire. The staff exploded in golden light, shaking the ground, forcing Oba and the betrayer back. The glow lit the faces of every warrior, turning despair into fury. Elder Amara's voice carried strong. The oath demands sacrifice, but never in vain. Kunto raised the staff high, his voice raw with pain. "Then I will end this, for him, for all." The battlefield trembled as destiny surged. The battlefield quieted as smoke thinned, revealing broken spears and weary faces. Kunto stood trembling, staff dimming to a steady glow. Villagers stepped from hiding, voices hushed as they saw the bodies of the fallen. Elder Amara moved slowly through the carnage, her lips whispering blessings for the dead. Io lay wounded yet alive, his chest rising faintly, his hand clasping Kunto's wrist with defiance against death. Kunto whispered, "You carried me when I faltered, brother." The villagers gathered, some mourning, some bowing low. Amara's voice carried strong. "The storm has passed, but its scars remain." Kunto raised his eyes, heavy with both loss and duty. The sky brightened, clouds parting, sunlight spilling across the blood-stained earth. In the silence, the land seemed to breathe again. The betrayer knelt in the square, bracelets clinking like hollow echoes of pride. His eyes no longer burned with ambition, but dimmed with regret. Villagers surrounded him, their stares heavy with judgment and sorrow. Kunto approached, staff steady in his hand, gaze piercing yet mournful. The betrayer whispered, "I thought envy would crown me, but it chained me instead." A hush spread as Kunto answered, "You are brothers still, though your path cut deep." Elder Amara's voice trembled. "The ancestors hear truth in sorrow, but forgiveness lives in deeds." The betrayer lowered his head, tears striking dust. Children clung to their mothers, watching silently as justice turned to mercy. Oba's shadow was gone, yet the wound he left remained. Kunto said, "You will carry your regret, not as curse, but as burden to make right." Beside the healing fires, Io sat upright, his body weak but spirit unbroken. Kunto knelt at his side, the staff resting quietly in the earth. Io chuckled, though pain twisted his face. "You fight like a storm now, but never forget who you fight for." Kunto bowed his head, voice soft, "For you, for them, for all who came before us." The villagers gathered, laying herbs and water, their hands gentle in gratitude. Elder Amara placed her palm on Io's shoulder, whispering, "Your wound is heavy, but your spirit is heavier." The people began to sing softly, voices weaving healing across the night. Kunto closed his eyes, the melody seeping into his bones like balm. Io's eyes glimmered with pride, his hand gripping Kunto's arm. The oath was not just a burden now. It was a bond sealed in sacrifice and love. The sacred grove shimmered under moonlight as Kunto lifted the staff over the altar. The villagers stood in reverent silence, torches lining the circle. Elder Amara's voice rose in chant, calling ancestors to witness. Kunto pressed the staff into the earth, golden light spreading through the carvings of stone. He declared, "The oath is not broken. It lives in us renewed." A hush swept through the grove, the air trembling with unseen wings. Villagers knelt, whispering prayers of thanks. Io stood with difficulty, leaning on his spear, his gaze unshaken. The betrayer watched from the edge, head bowed, his face wet with tears. Amara's voice carried, "The ancestors bless what is bound in truth." Kunto lifted the staff once more, fire and moon weaving together. The night answered with silence so deep it felt eternal. The village returned to quiet as dawn rose, painting the sky with pale gold. Kunto walked alone to the hilltop, staff resting across his shoulder. The wind carried whispers of ancestors, gentle now, no longer heavy with curse. He gazed across fields where life stirred anew, children running, women singing softly as they rebuilt. Elder Amara appeared at his side, her hand resting lightly on his arm. She said, "The oath shaped you, but you shaped it in return." Kunto nodded, eyes fixed on the horizon. Io's laughter echoed faintly from below, alive and bright despite scars. The betrayer worked silently among villagers, carrying wood with lowered head, no longer chasing shadows. Kunto raised the staff once more, not in battle, but in peace. He whispered, "Let this oath live in every breath we take." The sky glowed brighter, the story closing in quiet triumph.